I was recently speaking with a woman about the role of faith in her life, and she kind of confessed, I have a lot of faith, but a while ago I stopped practicing religion. I still believe, I'm not antagonistic about it, but I don't really practice my faith in institutional religion anymore. And she explained, my parents were very devout, and she said, my mother really put time into her faith. Every day prayers and devotions. She went to Mass every week. A lot of weeks she went more than once in the week. But I found that when hard things happened to her, her faith was nowhere to be found. It was kind of strange. I would say to her, Mom, but what about your faith? What about your faith? Where does it go when you need it the most? Have you ever felt like that? Like your faith was sleeping on the job? Maybe you're like a lot of us who have the kind of faith that does great during ordinary days. It's good, it brings us some comfort, it brings us focus, it keeps us on the path. But for some of us, when things get really scary, when they get really tough, we get paralyzed. That's what the gospel is about today. That had to be how they felt when they were on that boat in the story. This was no small situation they were in. This was seriously scary. People die in things like this. Water splashing over the side of the boat in the dark. And they had their faith in the boat with them, but he was asleep. Just like this woman in the story. There was faith there, but it was sleeping. And they had to ask themselves, Jesus, are you seriously going to let this happen to us on your watch? Are you seriously going to let us drown out here with you in the boat? I think a lot of people feel that way today. Lord, are you seriously going to let my house get foreclosed? Are you seriously going to not rescue us when my spouse is dying of cancer or when our marriage is falling apart? Are you sleeping while I'm waiting on these test results that are going to change the course of my life? We need to do perhaps exactly what the apostles did in this story, in these moments, and that is wake up our faith. We need to do whatever we have to do to rouse our faith, to shake it. It may be sleeping, because maybe it's on low power mode, because we've just been doing the day-to-day. But there comes a time when we need its full power, and we need to stop at nothing to rouse it and wake it up. One of the famous stories of somebody with faith is the story of Moses. And the pinnacle of the life of Moses was bringing people through the Red Sea, bringing the recently released from slavery ancestors that we have through the Red Sea. And that sounds to us like a story that shows God's power. But there's an important detail to that story. Moses freed the slaves with God's plagues, and then they ran to freedom. But the Egyptians were behind them. And Pharaoh and the chariots were on their heels and were far more powerful than they were. And they were prepared to annihilate them. And so when they got to the edge of the Red Sea and they saw there was no way across, they despaired. And God said to Moses, take them through the sea. Well, there are certain things that are not written in Scripture, but are believed by the community. And in the Jewish tradition, that's called midrash. And the midrash of that story that has been shared by rabbis for years is that Moses was told by God, go into that sea and I will part it for you. And the story goes, Moses entered the sea up to his ankles. And then he kept walking up to his thighs. Still no sign of parting. He went further, waist deep, and told everyone to follow him. He went further, and according to this belief that generations have had, the Red Sea did not begin to part until Moses was willing to get up to his chest in depth. Can you imagine what it felt like bringing all of these people who are trusting you into the Red Sea up to their chests before the sea parted and the miracle happened? One author says that the real thing that all of us need to work on doing in our life is zooming out. We need to zoom out and get some altitude above our life so we can see it from like a 30,000 foot view. This one author says, as hard as it may seem, the thing we need to do is to view our life like a movie. It's you, but it's not you. So that when something happens in life, you can say, whoa, I wasn't expecting that plot twist. I wonder what our hero is going to do now. What's coming next after this? That's a real unexpected cliffhanger. Let's see how our hero gets out of this one. And if we do that, we'll find there's always a next scene. It's never the last scene in the show. We should never assume that one experience we're having or one moment in the story is the whole story. That's never true. We have to be able to zoom out so we can see it from a distance. I was working on this homily on Wednesday, and I was in a sidewalk cafe. And as I was trying to figure out how to put this into words, a dad pedaled by on his bike. And behind the dad, in a little tiny seat, was a little tiny kid wearing a little tiny helmet and a tiny little reflective vest. And as the dad was pedaling calmly, the kid was leaning back with his arms out like this. And I thought to myself, I wonder if this kid thinks he's the one making it go. Does he think that by leaning back like this, he's making the bike go forward? I wondered if maybe that would be a good image for us to remember what it feels like to have a father, to have someone like Nick is for Nicholas, bringing you along, providing all along the way, making ready the path before you. That little kid in the bike seat had no idea that it was his dad that was doing it the whole time. And that can be the same for us. We think we're the ones going forward on our journey, but we're sitting in God's bike seat. And God is the one pedaling us, leading us. And if we can allow ourselves to feel that let go and let God kind of feeling. So this week we're being challenged to ask ourselves, am I in a place where my faith maybe has been a little bit asleep? What do I need to do to wake my faith up? Do I have to do what that little kid did and be willing to lean back as I go forward and have my arms out? Do I need to let go and let God? Do I instead need to take a page out of Moses' book, and I'm in the middle of something that requires me to show up for it, and I've got to keep moving forward, even though I might be chest deep before I see any kind of sign of something changing? Maybe some of you can relate to being neck deep or deeper before the miracle. Do you need to zoom out? Do we need to zoom out and get a bigger perspective and see our life as an amazing, miraculous, complicated plot with lots of twists and turns? And we get to be the hero of that story by the choices that we make. The awesome musical Les Mis started off as a book written by Victor Hugo, who also wrote The Hunchback of Notre Dame. And he said, all of us need to be courageous in the face of challenge. And this is how he said it. Have courage. in the great sorrows of life, and to have patience for the small sorrows of life. And once you have done everything you can to complete your daily task, go then to sleep in peace, because God is awake.